Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Issei. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei become the Dragon Lord? Part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Smack. The figure was sent hurtling through the abandoned church, crashing through the long benches until it hits the wall. Seconds later a gold-colored light spear narrowly hit head if he left it where it was positioned. Issei groaned as he rubbed his left cheek, an obvious swell appearing on it. He also ignored the small cut from the light spear that was thrown at him. Before him stood a very pissed-off Lolita dressed fallen angel middled Caloriner by her side with a scowl on her face. Both with their thorned halos blazing, their scleras black with slit eyes, and their wings unfurled, their jaws unhinged and their sharp teeth slightly bared. He sat up as he scowled at the two women, the welt on his cheek healing. Okay. I get it. He cleared his throat. I fucked up. You did more than that. Caloriner snarled. We had to rewrite her memories into thinking she had a very vivid nightmare. The graceless male stood as he dusted his clothes, not liking the fact that he was being tossed around by these two women. One of them looks like a child no less. He thought. What does it matter anyway? He patted his fedora before placing it on his head. Middled stopped Caloriner from attacking the man. We're wasting our time here. The blonde scowled at the man. Come on. We're going to check on the girl. Leaving her alone while Rainer is gone patrolling would be very bad for us. Issei groaned, wincing at the small throb of pain that rushed through his body. He opened his eyes, his vision blurry through his sight. Wah, he mumbled as he attempted to move. Why can't I move? He thought. Finally his brain registered an additional 3 weights to his one that he got used to. His eyes finally focused as he noted 4 different colors before him. Red, blonde, white, and black. Ria's Kiba Kaneko Akeno. He frowned slightly as he tried to raise himself, feeling his arms slipping from the feminine arms and large breasts. He winced as he felt his stomach. Fuck. He muttered. A small hand was gently placed on his chest. You should rest more, Issei-senpai. Kaneko's voice whispered to him. Lying down would be better for you. She added. Looking down to the white-haired loli, Issei noted that her eyes were slit with red sclera, her body giving a faint blue outline of a glow. He finally noted that the others were glowing as well. Ria's red, Kiba's green, and Akeno's yellow. All of them like Kaneko were naked as the day they were born. And their wings giving warmth along with their body heat. Nodding to himself, he lay back down. Ria's, who latched onto his right arm, laid there with a small and worried frown on her beautiful face, her arms seeking out for his. Finding it, she wrapped her arms and her breasts around the limb and side. Below the sleeping devil heiress was the knight of the peerage. Kiba's naked breasts, light brown nipple with lighter tones areola, was pressed to his side, her arms wrapped securely around his waist. Her hips decent width as her legs being well toned and her ass was well rounded. Her blonde hair was disheveled, but looked rather nice. He always wondered how she can fit such large mammaries into the shirt. Kaneko was at his left, her head with white hair rested near his hip. Her eyes closed as she concentrated on healing him. Her breasts weren't too small, nor was she completely flat-chested. Her breast being small enough for a child to grope, her nipples having a pink color with equal colored areola. Her hips were narrowed with a slight shape to it, showing signs of maturity. Her ass had a slight firmness to it. Akeno rested at his left, having retaking his arm and placing it between her larger breasts that were topped with a darker toned nipples and lighter colored areola. Her ass was big, but not as big as Ria's. Her hips were wider though, and could give an alluring sway if she were to strut it. So this is what Ria's did when I almost died. He thought as Cedric groaned. Issei? She asked as she opened her devil-trade eyes. She breathed as she sat up slightly, her wings retracted onto her lower back. Issei. She smiled as she hugged him, burying his face into her cleavage. Thanks Satan, you're alive. She said with tears brimming in her devil-enhanced eyes. Can't breathe. Was all the revived devil can't say through the flesh mounts of Ria's gremmery. The act caused the other girls to wake up, making their dreams of a certain pawn pop as their eyes flutter open. The 3 other members of Ria's peerage looked as Issei was being smothered in the Redeed's breasts. The other 3 allowed their wings to sink into their backs and hugged the suffocating brunette, heedless of his pleas of help. The 5 were now currently on his bed, the bed sheets over their lower forms. And Issei would have been dying to be in this situation. And that's how I ended up like that. Issei, who was wearing a pair of brown boxers, finished retelling his part of the story as Ria's was healing the fading scar in his stomach. Removing her now dimmed hand, Ria's, who wore her silky black and brown underwear and sat at his left, looked at her pawn with concern. Are you sure that you're alright? She asked. Issei sighed. Not really. He patted Kaneko's, wearing a cute baby blue black cat printed bra and panties, sleeping head. Being the youngest of the devils, she has the smallest reserves of them all. I'm worried about Asia. He admitted. Well, your leg will be fine. Akeno addressed as she sat beside the Redeed, wearing a dark purple set with transparent parts that showed more cleavage. How can you be worried about that nun? Kiba, who was wearing a blue sports bra and equal-colored boxers and had Kaneko's leg on her lap, wondered. She's too innocent for this world, Kiba. Issei replied. About that exorcist. Ria's changed the subject. Well, a rogue one nonetheless is a very dangerous individual if he is able to wield strong powers of light. She stated. Then I guess we devils aren't the only ones that have strays, huh? The brunette sighed as he leaned against the wall. There are many who get expelled from the church and end up serving under the fallen. Kiba explained. She doesn't give off the feeling of being a rogue exorcist. Issei defended. Either way. Rias gave the brunette a stern gaze. We are devils. She is under the wings of the fallen angels. Those are facts. She pointed out. I do not want you to be in the same vicinity as her. She commanded. Understood. But, Ria-senpai, Issei tried. Understood. She narrowed her eyes as they gained their devil's trait. Issei looked down. Hi. Rias held his face up by his chin, her narrowed eyes relaxed and softened. I don't want you to get hurt, Issei. She said softly as she rubbed his cheeks. I don't want to lose someone important to me again, she added. The kendo reached across and held his hand. There are still a lot we have to learn from each other. She giggled. Kiba smiled. Maybe we can train together too. She added. You won't leave me alone. Kaneko muttered. Issei sighed. I'll do my best. He thought. 50. Issei, wearing a red tracksuit, groaned loudly as he pulled his chin over a handlebar at one of the parks. His body went down and he attempted to pull himself up again. 51 he gritted before his left arm pulsed in pain, letting his right arm to deal with the weight of his body. He groaned as he tried to pull himself up, but his arm slipped and he fell ass first to the dirt ground. Gripping his left shoulder, he groaned. Damn, he cursed. This is getting me nowhere, he muttered. A flash of Asia being forced upon went through his mind and he shook his head. No. She's with that asshole. God knows he ignored the pain in his head. What that freak is doing to her now. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei. A familiar voice called him. The brown-haired devil quickly stood up, shocked that he heard the voice of the young nun. Turning around he can see her, looking at him with her large green eyes. Hey Asia, he muttered in slight disbelief and happiness upon seeing that she's alright. He slowly made his way to her, hoping that what he saw was not an illusion. Asia Stybeen, you're alright. He smiled as he neared her, the nun being an arm reach away from him. Asia smiled at the brunette, glad to see him again. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei. She greeted him before she was suddenly held in a hug. Her eyes widened upon feeling the taller male holding her body close to his, and his shoulders were shaking. Sono così felice, I'm so glad. He sniffed. Sono così felice chi tu stia bene, I'm so glad you're okay, Asia. He cried as tears came down his eyes. The nun was confused at the action and his word, but smiled nonetheless as she hugged the devil back, her eyes closed with a small blush on her face. Asia blinked at the food that was before her. A half-wrapped hamburger with fries and a medium cup of soda. Questo sembra così sorprendente, this looks so amazing. She smiled at the offered food before folding her hands to pray. Grazie per aversi benedetto con il cibo, O Grand Signor. Thank you for blessing us with food, O great Lord. Amen. Issei had to bite back a painful groan as he ended the prayer with her. He nevertheless smiled at the fact that she was alright. Well, at least he hoped she is. Asia? He called her, getting the young nun's attention. Stybeen, are you okay? The green-eyed blonde blinked in slight confusion, her head tilted to the side. Certo lo sono, of course I am. She gave a small smile. Ma, but the smile soon faded. Ho. Avuto un incubo, I had a nightmare. Her voice gave a small shudder. Seeing that the brunette silent, she took it as a sign to continue. Ero con un padre dalla chiesa per aiutar a gitter un agnello perso, I was with a father from the church to help guide a lost lamb. Siamo andati dentro dopo ci si lasciato e mi ha detto di fare una barriera, ci ho fatto, we went inside after he let us in, and he told me to make a barrier, which I did. Her eye began to glisten with tears. Ma quando sono tornato, but when I came back. She whimpered. Ti ho trovato sul pavimento, sanguinante, I found you on the floor, bleeding. E poi ho visto padre puntava un'arma a voi, and then I saw father was aiming a weapon at you. Poi ho visto l'ipotesi ci siamo venuti a visitare era morto, I then saw the guest that we came to visit was dead. Issei's hands balled into fists, remembering how his contract was butchered. Poi mi ha detto che eri un diavolo e combattuto, he then told me that you were a devil and fought. Ha quasi ti ha ucciso, ma io lo fermai, he nearly killed you, but I stopped him. Lo pregai di lasciarti andare. Ci nonostante sia un diavolo, chi molto bene in te, that despite being a devil, there's a lot of good in you. She looked to the side. Non chi bisogno di dire più, you don't have to say any more, Asia. Issei tried. The nun shook her head, tears trailing down her cheeks. Voglio dirti, Signore Issei, I want to tell you, Mr. Issei. She pushed. Ha cercado die. He tried to. She chocked. Ha cercado di violentarme me, he tried to rape me. She confessed. Si tentado die from Arlo, nonostante la ferite, you tried to stop him, despite the injuries. I avuto un buco nello stomaco e stava perdendo molto sangue, you had a hole in your stomach and was losing a lot of blood. She then looked down. Ma prima di ogni altra cosa sarà potuto accadere, sei stato chiamato via da un cerchio magico rosso, but before anything else could have happened, you got called away by a red magical circle. Once again, tears began to flow from her eyes. Issei quickly went around the table and gently placed his hand on her shoulder, being careful not to scare the girl. Asia felt his hand, but instead of freaking out, she pushed herself to him, crying slightly on his shoulder. Stava per prover di nuovo, he was going to try again. Ho cercado di strisciar via da lui, dal momento che har avvanato I miei vestiti, I tried to crawl away from him since he ruined my clothes. Era così vicino, he was so close. She closed her eyes, hoping to block the vision of the crazed exorcist that flashed through her mind. Mommy stato salvato, but I was saved. Saved. Issei thought as he was glad that his friend did not suffer a fate, to a lot of women, worse than death, but wondered who rescued her. Non ho visto il suo viso, I did not see her face. The young nun said. Male stato brevi ha I capelli biondi, but she was short and has blonde hair. She smiled. E poi mi sono svegliato piangendo, and then I woke up crying. She sniffed. Virginia Bean, it's alright. He hushed her as he combed through her hair. He was silent as he ignored the wet spot on his shoulder and the other costumers looking at them. Come su andiamo fuori, eh, how about we go out, huh? Divertirsi un po', have some fun. He suggested. Large green eyes meet brown. Sei sicuro ci va bene, are you sure it's okay? She asked. Perch no, why not? He shrugged. Ho tutto il giorno, I have all day. He smiled. Asia smiled, wiping the tears from her eyes, and looked at the young devil. Grazie, Signor Issei, thank you Mr. Issei. The two walked around the shopping malls and entered various game rooms. Wah. Asia was at the sight of the arcade machines and lights. E così bello, it's so beautiful. She smiled. Come on. Tien signero cum courier cum un professionista, I'll teach how to race like a pro. He grinned as he guided her to one of the racing games. Sighed Edie, take a seat, Asia. He instructed as she did so and began to show her the works of the gaming machine. 15 seconds into the race, Asia's car crashed into the side. Ah! She screamed at the sight. Io mi sono scientato, I crashed. She pouted cutely, her cheeks puffed as she heard the brown-haired devil laughed. Ti stai comportando media, Signor Issei, you're being mean, Mr. Issei. She complained with teary eyes. Scusate, sorry. He smiled as he patted her head. E solo ci si guarda così carino quando si mais il bronzio, it's just that you look so cute when you pouted. He admitted. That made the nun, if possible, pouted more. The two then proceeded to have some more fun, much to the blonde's surprise. She found herself laughing and smiling more than she was used to. She even danced a bit and enjoyed it a lot. The young nun and brown-haired devil was making their way to the exit of the arcade, the girl holding a small photo of herself and Issei on it, both their names written in Japanese. The green-eyed nun looked to the side and noted something before rushing towards it, catching the brunette's attention. Issei looked at Asia, gazed at the crane game prizes, all of them being a red-eyed yellow mouse with black stripes and a swirled tail. Di Piasaviron, you like to have a, raku? He said as he approached her. The nun gasped as she turned to him, a small blush on her face as she averted her gaze from his brown eyes. Non, bean, no well she looked down as the blush spread over her face. See, yes. She mumbled. The pawn of Ria's Gremory's peerage only grinned as he slipped a yen into the coin slot, the machine starting through the donation. Ho usato per venire quinella's ona con Mitsuda e Motohama, quando abbiamo avuto il tempo, I used to come here in the area with Mitsuda and Motohama, when we had the time. The young Hyoudou said as he operated the crane of the machine. Abituado it used to? Asia blinked as the claw clamped on one of the many duplicated prizes. See, yeah. Issei sighed as he pulled up the Rachu doll and maneuvered it to the open slide. He released it and Asia clapped at the side of the doll. Glad for something that distracted her from the conversation, he grabbed the doll and handed it to her. Ecco qui, here you go, Asia. He smiled. Assicurati di prendersi cura di esso, make sure you take care of it. Asia hugged her one prize to her chest, a smile on her face. Grazie mille, Signor Issei, thank you very much, Mr. Issei. Mi prendero cura di questo raku dal momento che un tesoro ho guadagnato da incontrarvi, I'll take good care of this raku, since it's a treasure I gained from meeting you. Issei scratched his cheek with a small smile as he looked away. Bina Lara, well then. Dove ander dopo, where to go next? He wondered as he turned to walk out the arcade, missing the young nun's sad smile as she held the small pushy to her face. Ma passiamo solo godere questo momento prezioso oggi, but we can only enjoy this precious moment today. She said in such a soft voice that not even Issei-in-Han's hearing picked up. Flashback, sto per morire, I'm going to die. The nun blinked as tears shimmered in her eyes. Issei nodded, a sad frown on his face. Mi dispiace, bambino, I'm sorry, child. He said as soothingly as he possibly can, which worked he guessed. Ma la vostra tresatura sacroi in realtà uccidendo il più lo si utilizza, but your sacred gear is actually killing you the more you use it. He said. Quanto tempo devo fino a quando Dio chiama per me, how long do I have until God calls for me? She choked. Domani sera sarà la luna piena, tomorrow night there will be a full moon. Faremo una cerimonia per rimuovere l'ingranaggio sacro dentro di voi, we will do a ceremony to remove the sacred gear within you. He smiled. E poi si va in una dove non chi dolore nessuna malaccia, sempre con nostro padre sopra, and then you will go to where there is no pain and no sickness, forever with our Father above. Asia allowed the tears to flow down her cheeks. Domani vi permettere di trascorrere l'ultima del vostro or di felicita, tomorrow you will spend the last of your hours in happiness. The fallen angel said as he turned his back to the blonde nun. Imploroci li si usa con saggezza, I implore that you use them wisely. Asia fell to her knees, holding her face as she cried silently. Flashback end. Asia? Issei called the nun. Stay bean, you okay? The nun shook her head and gave him a smile as she closed her eyes. Sono solo molto felice ora, I'm just very happy now. Issei stood by a vending machine, waiting for the paid drinks to fall out. Once he got the two of the purchased beverages, he gave one to the young nun. Non ho mai avuto così divertente nella mia vita, I've never had so much fun in my life. Asia smiled as she took the offered drink, giving a small bow in gratitude. Non sei sopra esagerando, aren't you over-exaggerating? He chuckled as he popped the can open. He raised his left hand and flinched in pain. Asia quickly stepped to him. Il vostro dolor del braccio, signor Issei, does your arm hurt, Mr. Issei? Solo un po', just a bit. He admitted as he rolled his arm, wincing at the sting. Deve essere successo quando sono caduto in precedenza, must have happened when I fell earlier. He lied. Asia nodded. Seguimi, signor Issei, follow me, Mr. Issei. She said as she guided him to a secluded area. The two were sitting in a relaxing area where a large man-made lake is. Asia's rings were glowing as they spread a soothing aura over the young devil. The brunette gets to look as the young nun was concentrating on healing his arm. She's really cute, he thought. I bet that if she was living a normal life, she would have a boyfriend by now. Hopefully one that would love and take care of her. He thought as Yuma flashed through his mind. The glowing fade and Asia smiled, glad that she was of some help to someone in need. La, there. She nodded to herself. Come si sente ora il braccio, how does your arm feel now? The young devil stood and rotated his arm, amazed by how well it felt. Stupefacente, amazing, Asia. He exclaimed with wide eyes and a smile. Sei davvero sorprendente con questo, you're really amazing with this, huh? Asia smiled as she looked at the man-made lake, a somber glint in her eyes. Io non penso che io sono davvero così special, I don't think that I'm really that special. She said. Issei blinked as he looked at the nun. Cosa intendi, what do you mean? He wondered. Mi stato abbandonato dai miei genitori dopo la mia nascita, I was abandoned by my parents after I was born, she replied, missing the small frown from the brown-haired devil. Mi stato detto che stato trovato piangendo nella parte anteriore di una chiesa in una piccola città europea, I was told that I was found crying at the front of a church in a small European town. Ecco dove sono cresciuto per I primi anni della mia vita, that's where I grew up for the first few years of my life. She looked up at the sky. Quando avevo 8 anni, un cane ferito è stato trovato nei pressi della chiesa, when I was 8, a wounded dog was found near the church. È stato vicino alla morte, it was close to dying. La sua anziana hanno detto che tutto cio ci possono fare prendersi cura di esso fino a quando ai suoi momenti finali, dicendo che è meglio che quando si va al nostro Padre Celeste, sarà più felice. The older nuns said that all they can do is take care of it until its final moments, saying that it is best that when it goes to our Heavenly Father, he will be happier. Looking at the young Hyoudou, she smiled. Quella notte sono andato al cane prego, that night, I went to dog and prayed. She held out her hands. Ho pregato duro cum passo, I prayed as hard as I can. Poi ho messo le mani sul cane in modo lo spirito santo lo può toccare, e un miracolo è accaduto, then I placed my hands on the dog, so the Holy Spirit can touch him, and a miracle happened. Lionelli appaiono sul dita di nuovo mentre hanno dato un debole baglier, the rings appeared on fingers again, as they gave a faint glow. Questo e quando gli altri ho scoperto come benedetta io veramente ero, that's when the others and I found out how blessed I truly was. The glow faded as the rings vanished in a small green flash. Oggi mesi dopo, sono stato preso ad una del grandi in Italia, dove mi è stato chiesto di cura malati e ferite I cristiani che sono stati provenienti da tutto il mondo. A few months after that, I was taken to one of the large churches in Italy, where I was asked to heal illness and wounds of Christians that were coming from all over the world. Ero così felice che il mio potrebbe tante person, I was so happy that my power could help so many people. She smiled. Asia Issei thought sadly at the blonde. The smile faded as the blonde looked down. Poi 2 anni fa, ho incontrato un uomo che è stato gravemente ferito, then 2 years ago, I encountered a man that was heavily wounded. Era vicino alla chiesa, che Hyoudou, he was near the church, asking and begging for help. Ho preso pietà di lui e guarito lui, salvandogli la vita nel processo, I took pity on him and healed him, saving his life in the process. Her voice cracked a bit. Si scoperci l'uomo che mi sono imbattuto con era un diavolo, it turns out that the man that I came across with was a devil. Dopo essere stato guarito, 2 dei templari che era nella stazione sono stati uccisi e molti altri sono rimasti feriti nel tentativo di fermarlo. After he was healed, 2 of the templars that was in station were killed, and several more were injured in trying to stop him. Si può guarire diavoli, she can heal devils. Issei nodded, seeing the logic as his injury was healed by the bond sacred gear. Lei è una strega, she's a witch. Una strega che guaris diavoli, a witch that heals devils. Issei wrapped his left arm around the nun's shoulder and pulled her to his chest, rubbing her back as she began to sob. You really don't belong in this side of the world, Asia. He mentally sighed at his friend. Mi è stato ballato come eretico perché ho avuto il potere di guarire, anche diavoli, I was branded as a heretic because I had the powers to even heal devils. She said. Da allora, sono stato in movimento da una caduta cura angelo ad un altro, since then, I've been moving from one fallen angel care to another. She looked at the brunette and smiled. Ma non ho mai smesso di pregare Dio, anche durante queste prove, but I never stopped praying to God, even throughout these trials. Sarò sempre esprimere la mia gratitudine a lui, I will always express my gratitude to him. Asia. He paused for a while. Devo dirti una cosa, I have to tell you something. He sighed as he gently released her and stood. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei. She wondered as he walked towards the edge of the lake. Credo che dovrei confessar, I guess I should confess. He chuckled to himself as he turned his head to the nun. Asia. He said. Sarò onesto a voi, I'll be honest to you. He took a deep breath. Quello che quasi te successo non era un sogno, what nearly happened to you wasn't a dream. Huh? She blinked. E successo davvero, it really happened. Abbiamo fatto incontrar, we did meet. Io non combatto contro quel pret psycho, I did fight against that psycho priest. E ha fatto quasi violentarti, and he did nearly rape you. He sighed as he allowed his wings to rip out his back, slipping out the hidden slits of his track jacket. He looked at her, his now brown slit eyes with red sclera locking with green. Sono davvero un diavolo, I really am a devil. He said grimly. Asia covered her mouth with her hands, clearly shocked at the situation. She slowly stood up as she kept her gaze on him. Issei couldn't help but look down, assuming that she would call him a monster of sorts. He did lie to her after all. He heard the footsteps of the brown shoes of the blonde. Asia stepped to the brown-haired devil, saddened that he has such a burden placed on him. She neared him and raised her hands to his face, cupping his cheeks and making him looking at her eyes. Issei saw the blonde smiled at him, her green eyes brimming with tears. Non importa se sei un diavolo, Signor Issei, it doesn't matter if you're a devil, Mr. Issei. Mi hai salvato la vita e la mia purezza, you saved my life and my purity. She pulled him into a hug, her arms wrapped around his back and pulled him close, the small plushie being squeezed on his back. Tu sei una brava persona, Signor Issei, you're a good person, Mr. Issei. Non lascia che nessuno vi dico diverso, don't let anyone else tell you different. Asia Issei blinked as he retracted his wings, and eyes returned to normal. He wrapped his arms around her back and sighed. Grazie, thank you. Because servono gli amici, what are friends for? She smiled. Si superiamo la nostra prove, sono sicuro che I nostri sogni diventeranno realtà, if we overcome our ordeals, I'm sure that our dreams will come true. The Italian girl's smile brightened. The pawn of Ria's Gremory's peerage blinked. Quali il tuo sogno, what's your dream, Asia-chan? He asked. Asia hugged the little plush that Issei won for her, a small blush on her face as she gave a shy smile. Io voglio avere amici, I want to have friends. She said. Voglio avere un sacco di amici, I want to have a lot of friends. Amici di sorridere divertirsi con, friends to smile and have fun with. Amici di Issei con I trascorrere del tempo con, friends to go out with and spend time with. She looked at him with a smile on her face. La prima cosa da fare trovar un amico, a destra, the first thing to do is to find a friend, right? Issei raised his right hand and placed it on her head. Allora io sarò il tuo amico, then I'll be your friend, Asia. He smiled. Voglio dire, non siamo già amici, I mean, aren't we already friends? He smiled at her. Abbiamo fatto chatter ed ero sicuro che hai avuto troppo divertente, a destra, we did chat and I was sure that you had fun too, right? He turned and scratched his cheeks, a small blush on his face, as he saw the admired look in those large green eyes. Oh forse non era abbastanza Laura, or maybe it wasn't enough then. He wondered. The blonde shook her head. Virginia Bean, it's fine. Hai fatto molto di più di cinqu'altro ho conosciuto, you've done a lot more than anyone I've known. Anche I bambini che erano in chiesa prima che il mio sfratto era distante da me, even the children that were at the church before my eviction was distant from me. She looked to the side. Non sto causare alcun problema per voi, sono io, I'm not causing any trouble for you, am I? She asked. Sono un diavolo e tu sei una suora, così che cosa, I'm a devil and you're a nun, so what? He smiled as he stepped towards her and placed his hands on her shoulders. Sarò lì per proteggere l'utente non importa quale, I'll be there to protect you no matter what. A questo servono gli amici, that's what friends are for. Promessa, promise? She asked with hope in Ho's green eyes. Con il meglio del mie capacità, with the best of my abilities. He said. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei. Asia's green eyes were glistened with tears. Before the nun could say anything else, feathers began to rain down in the area. Black feathers. Without thinking, Issei shoved Asia out of the way before a red spear of light pierced through his right shoulder, causing him to fall to the ground and groan in pain. You best get away from her, devil. A familiar voice said with scorn. That voice? Issei thought. Rainer raised her right hand, a second spear appearing, and was ready to impale the devil to the ground. But before she can, Asia leaped forward, placing her body upon the wounded brunette. Aspetta, Signoria Rainer, wait, Ms. Rainer. She shouted. Non-male, Signor Issei, don't hurt, Mr. Issei. She begged. The fallen angel paused, her violet eyes widening at the mention of her beloved's name. Issei, she repeated as the spear shattered in a red burst, and she glided to the floor. Asia helped the groaning devil to sit as she summoned her rings to heal the wound. The fallen angel took a shaky step forward, disbelief in her eyes as she seized the brunette. Issei-kun. Her voice cracked. The pawn of Ria's peerage sighed after the wound was healed. With Asia's help, he stood and smiled at the woman. Hey, Yuma-chan. The graceless angel couldn't stop herself. She moved fast, her wings pushing her towards the young man, and hugged him tightly, pressing her body to his own, as if she tried to bond with him. She palmed his cheeks and pulled him into a searing kiss, tears leaking from her closed eyes, as she relished in feelings of her love's lips to her own. Asia's face was beet red at the sight of her first friend and black-winged guardian kissing before her. She felt a small twinge of something inside of her, but didn't delve into it as the two separated. You're alive. Rainer choked as she pressed her forehead to his own, a small smile on her beautiful face. By Father's grace, you're alive. She laughs. Issei hugged the woman around her waist, resting against her. Yuma-chan. He sighed as he pulled back and looked at Asia. Credo ci voi due ora l'altro poi, I guess you two know each other then. Asia nodded. Si, yes. La Signoria Rainer, La Signoria Miltelt, e La Signoria Caloriner preso curati me mentre ero in chiesa, she, along with Ms. Miltelt and Ms. Caloriner looked after me while I was at the church. She smiled. Simpatico, nice. The young Hyoudou nodded. Yuma-chan. He began. I'm sorry Issei. She said as she looked into his eyes. I'm sorry that I made you suffer. I'm sorry that I was forced to kill you. She mumbled. SH. He hushed her soothingly. It's alright Yuma-chan. He said. It's not your fault. He assured. The fallen angel nodded as she wiped the tears from her eyes. Okay. Look at the bright side. He grinned. I'm alive and well. Reincarnated as a devil, but still alive. And I got my sacred gear. He said proudly. Rainer blinked. You have a sacred gear? She asked and he nodded. Let me see it. She practically demanded. The brown-haired devil was slightly taken aback by the tone of her voice, but did so nonetheless. Okay. He raised his left hand and mentally summoned his gauntlet. Rainer held his armored portion of the arm and looked over it. Her eyes narrowed and her face morphed to a scowl. This is a twice critical, she growled, her teeth sharpened as her jaw unhinged. Her halo bursts to life as her wings ruffled against her back in her angered state. A fucking twice critical, her eyes turned to slits as her sclera burned black. I'm going to kill that fool of a Kalisk. Issei blinked as his fallen lover was now muttering in Hebrew. What's a twice critical, Yuma-chan? The fallen angel looks to her lover. Twice critical, also known in your language as the Tsum no Ryu, Dragon's Claw. It's an ordinary sacred gear that doubles one's power. Upon activation it releases the limits to the host's body. Doubles my power and release the limits of my body. Issei frowned in thought. My superiors told us that you have a dangerous sacred gear. She said. They wanted to confirm it before we could see whether you were a treat to us or not. So they sent you. He sighed. Rainer nodded. Falling in love with you was not part of the plan. She said as she lowered her gaze from him. Asia blinked as well, not understanding one of her caretakers. She tried. Rainer features receded as she sighed. Me dispius per taglier questa reunion breve ice, maho porter Asia torna Alice. I'm sorry to cut this reunion short ice, but I have carry Asia back to the church. Asia pouted sadly. Non voglio ander, I don't want to go. She mumbled. Rainer smiled as she patted the shorter female's head. Sono sicuro ci voi du possono incontrare domani, I'm sure that you two can meet tomorrow. Ma non vagar senza, middle, Caloriner, o me stesso, but no wandering off without, middled, Caloriner, or myself. Capito, Asia, understood, Asia. The graceless angel stated with a small frown on her face. Si, la signoria Rainer, yes Ms. Rainer. The blonde nun nodded. Iona, good. She nodded as she turned back to the brunette. I'll try visit later, ice. She smiled as she wrapped her wings around the nun. Seconds later, the two vanished in a whirlwind of black feathers. Hineko sat in the occult club rooms with a donut in her hand. She silently licked her lips and was about to take a bite. Slap. Must the last words you hear from me be a warning? The Grimoire heiress growled through her fanged teeth. Her right hand over her left shoulder. Her devil-trade eyes looked at her subordinate. How often must I tell you, Issei? She is the enemy. What if a different fallen angel were to come look for her instead? What if Rainer was meant to kill you, Issei? She questioned. Forget about both of them. It's not possible. You are now a member of the Grimoire household, a devil. Then kick me out of your household then. He said as he looked at the young woman that revived him. Then I'll go and see what I can do from then. You're asking the impossible. Kiba advised. Removing an evil piece is like taking out your heart, you'll die. She sighed. I'm just a pawn on the chessboard, right? The weakest piece, right? He asked as he held his arms up. Losing a single piece shouldn't be a problem. I'll be replaced just like that. What can? Enough. Rhea shouted, her power erupting from her being as a dark red with black outlines surround her form and shaking the very foundation of the old school building. The Grimoire heiress kept her eyes on her only pawn in her peerage. Do you really think that the pawns of a peerage are the weakest in the groups? She asked as she calmed her aura and herself. Issei didn't answer, but grunted as he looked to the side. Rhea's walked to her desk and leaned against it. As I have said, evil pieces possess the same traits as their chess counterparts. I'm sure Sona told you the traits of the chess pieces, correct? Issei nodded. Then tell the traits of the pawn in a peerage. She quizzed. Promotion. He breathed. Continue. Rhea's nodded. If the pawn reaches the last of the enemy lines, it able to promote to any of the other ranks minus the king. He sighed. So that means I can use any of the ability of a rook, knight, or a queen. As long as I recognize it as the enemy line, then yes. Rhea's nodded as Akeno stepped into the club, a serene smile on her face. When we fought against Astray was a good example. Issei looked at the Grimoire heiress. As for your sacred gear. She started. Twice critical, it doubles my power, removing my body limitations in the process as it activates. He sighed. Yuma-chan explained that. She looked pretty angry that she found out that she was controlled just for that. Rhea's placed her hand on his right cheek as she held his left hand. A sacred gear is manifested by the wielder's will. She smiled softly at him as her eyes returned to normal. The greater the willpower, the more powerful it will become. My willpower? He asked. Rhea's nodded as she stepped back, giving his hand a small squeeze before releasing it. Akeno walked to her king and whispered into her ears. The smile on the redeed vanished as she frowned. She nodded as she looked at her peerage. An urgent matter just came up. Akeno and I will be out for a bit. She said as she along with her queen make their way to the door. Issei was about to ask them something, but Rhea spoke before he could have uttered a word. I suppose you should visit Miyamoto-san. She suggested. She has been asking for you since you were hurt. And with that the door closed. The brunette sighed. Can you girls help me with the teleportation? He asked as he scratched his head. The rook and knight smiled at the pawn and nodded. You're kidding, right? A pink-haired girl about 17 asked with a raised eyebrow, her eyes blinking at her best friend incredulously. She has long pink hair which is kept in 2 ponytails on either side of her head. Her hair also has 2 thin, long bangs at the sides, 2 thin strands of hair over the left side of her forehead, and a spiky larger portion of hair covering the right side of her forehead. She has fierce orange eyes and furrowed eyebrows. She wears a set of glasses. Her physique is slender. Let us also note the visible pointed tooth appears at times in the right side of her mouth. She wears a brown shirt over her F-cup bust with the kanji taka on it and a set of brown knee-length baggy shorts, along with a set of brown shoes. She also wore a set of red hooped earrings in her earlobe and a straight line pierced through her left top auricle. Ray sighed at her friend. She had to lie to her in order to keep her devil contract a secret. I'm not joking, Saya. She breathed. I really like this guy. You also liked Hisashi and Takashi. She pointed out, holding out 2 fingers as a way to count to mention. And look how that shit turned out. She frowned. Ah yeah. But I can feel this guy is definitely different. She defended. How different can he be besides having a dick? The Pincat raised an eyebrow. Before the honey-haired girl can answer, a summoning circle appeared behind her. She gasps as she turned to it, forgetting that today was an appointment. Saya blinked at the side of the light show, wondering what the hell is going on in her friend's home. Issei opened his eyes once the light faded. He was about to greet Ray, but she stopped him by hugging him tightly, unintentionally pressing her bust to his chest. You're okay. She instantly blurted, forgetting her best friend's presence at the moment. Issei blinked. He then smiled as he hugged the honey-haired female. Sorry for worrying you. He sighed. But I had a lot to deal with while I was out. So what happened to you? She asked as she looked up to him, her arm slackened a bit but refused to release him. Kiba and Kaneko told me that you were hurt and very badly too. Ahem. Saya coughed loudly as she looked at the duo, both her eyebrows twitching at them. I'm sorry. But can you introduce me to your friend who just appeared out of a fucking red glowing circle with marking and sigils on it? She asked. Ray blushed in embarrassment as she released her hold on the young brunette and cleared her throat. Well she sighed. Saya, this is Hyoudo Issei, he's a devil. She moved her hand, motioning from the Pincat to the brunette. Issei-kun, this is Takagi Saya, she's my childhood friend and best friend. Hello, Takagi-san. The young devil greeted with a small bow. Charmed. She murmured as she looked at her friend. You expect me to believe this? Well, I did pop out of a red glowing circle with marking and sigils on it. He replied with a cheeky grin, earning a small giggle from Ray. Saya's eyebrow twitched, her pink hair giving a notable spike. She abruptly stood up, causing her large breasts to bounce unintentionally. Well then. She pointed at him. Let me see your horns, wings, and tail, huh? Do you have hooved feet? Do you wear a loincloth? Do you really look like that? She asked with narrowed eyes, but the devil can clearly the sparks of interest in those sharp ocular organs. Well, he scratched his head. I have wings. He responded as he allowed them to slip out his back. My eyes do change though. He said as they did and reverted back to normal. I look human. In fact, all devils do. Unless the devil is a stray. He said as he remembered Visor and her gruesome transformation. That's all I can say right now. Saya frowned. That's it. Any kinds of special traits? She asked. Well, he concentrated as he summoned twice critical and showed it to her. Saya's eyes sparkled at the sight of the draconic-like arm. She might not admit it, but she a fan of the supernatural after looking at supernatural. Can I? She asked. Her hand trembled at the sight of the clawed gauntlet. Ray snorted in humor. She knew of her friend's addiction to the supernatural, one of the reasons why she didn't tell her about it. Saya shot her friend a sharp glare. Shut it, Miyamoto. You got a lot of explaining to do. She practically growled, her sharp tooth actually gaining a glint in the light of the room. Issei held back a chuckle as the Pincat inspected his hand, fascinated by the markings and large green gem on the back of his hand. His phone suddenly rang. Sorry. He apologized as he reached into his pocket and took his phone out. Saya released his hand and stepped back. Hello. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei. Asia's voice came from the other side of the line. Hey Asia. Come ti senti, how are you feeling? He asked with a small smile. Bogli o ringrazi RV per tutto quello che hai fatto per me in un tempo così breve. I want to thank you for everything you've done for me in such a short time. Mi hai portato più gioia che potrei mai chiedere, you've brought me more joy than I could ever ask for. She sniffed. Issei's smile faded away as a small frown took over his face. Asia, cosa che di spagliato, what's wrong? He asked. Asia sat inside a room alone, tears streaming down her face as she held the phone. Mi dispiace, Signor Issei, I'm sorry Mr. Issei. Ma questo potrebbe essere, but this might be, she shook her head. L'ultima volta che ne parliamo, is the last time that we'll talk. Cosa intendi, what do you mean, Asia? He asked. Questo non dovrebbe essere l'ultima volta, this shouldn't be a last time. He claimed. Abbiamo promesso di incontrare domani, we promised to meet tomorrow. He reminded her. Asia choked back a sob. Sono così molto dispiaciuto, Signor Issei, I'm so very sorry Mr. Issei. She apologized. Ma non sarò in grado di mantenere quella promessa, but I won't be able to keep that promise. Arrivederci, goodbye. Che Dio vi benedica, and may God bless you. With that she closed the phone, dropping it, and proceeded to cry. Issei looked at his phone, hearing the tone line at his end, along with a feeling of dread. Issei-kun. Ray called her sparring partner. Sorry Ray. He looked her. But can we save this for another day? A friend of mine is in trouble and need to help her out. Ray saw the emotions in his eyes and sighed. Fine. She huffed. But I'm coming with you. No, you're not. He said in a rather firm tone. This a battle I'll be going to. I can defend myself. The spear-wielding girl said. Can you survive being pinned to a tree while losing a good deal of blood? Can you lie on the ground with a hole in your gut as you're forced to watch a friend nearly get raped? He asked with gritted teeth, causing the two young women to look at him with wide eyes. Issei placed his hands on the honey-haired young woman's shoulder and gave them a small squeeze. I don't want you to get hurt, Ray. He sighed. That's the last thing I want to go through right now. So I'm going to save my friend, alone if I have to. He then gave a small smile. But I'll come back. Ray looked aside with a huff, a small blush on her face as she saw the fire in his eyes. Fine. She turned away and walked. But you owe me. She added. You owe both of us. Saya put in. Issei nodded. Maybe I'll make a contract with you next time, Takagi-san. He said. We'll see. The pincat huffed. Ray walked back to the brunette and kissed his cheek, surprising the young devil. For luck. And I hope you pull through for both you and your friend. Issei walked into the clubroom, hoping that no one was about. So you finally came back. Kiba stated as she sat by the small table, a cup of tea in her hand. Issei flinched at the night of his mistress's peerage. Kiba. He yelped. I thought you left. He said. The blonde took a sip of her tea and placed it down. It's a good thing I didn't leave then, huh? The brunette laughed, albeit nervously as the beautiful young woman dressed in a male uniform looked at him. So? She smiled. Are you going? Issei frowned. Yeah. And I don't want to fight you if you were to stop me, but I'll do it. He said as he opened the door, Kaneko standing there. You'll get killed. She stated bluntly. Even if you were allowed a promotion, it will do nothing against a fallen angel, let alone a Kalisk. Even if that's case. He said as he patted the white tea's head. I'll save Asia. I would even risk my very soul if either of you were in the same situation. He said passionately, unintentionally gaining blushed looks from the two, Kaneko having her head down as Kiba turned to side. You really are reckless. Kiba smiled as she sighed and walked to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder. But it's praiseworthy nonetheless. She added. Kiba he looked at the knight as she equipped a halberd and twirled it with expertise. Besides she placed the weapon over her shoulders. It would be bad to lose my lunch partner. Even with the help of promotion. Kaneko breathed as she slipped on a pair of black gloves with small pads on her small hands. The church is a good example as the enemy front lines. Kaneko. He looked at his cowhide. Then you too. We're going to back you up. Kiba said. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The brunette raised his hands at the knight and rook. I'm in deep shit as it is already. He pointed out. I don't want you to get in trouble. He claimed. We'll burn that bridge after we crossed it. Kiba shrugged. Middlet was sitting on a tree branch, a scowl etched onto her young face. That fucking asshole. She thought in rage. I can't believe that a red glowing circle stopped her mid-rant. What's this? She wondered as she sees Rias and Akeno appear out of the teleportation circle. So this is the place, huh? The Gremory heiress asked her queen. Well, what do we have here? Middle questioned aloud as she landed before them, her left hand on her hip. A couple of girls out so late at night. My. Akeno placed her left hand over her mouth as she closed her eyes. Isn't it past your bedtime, child? Little girls should stay home with their mommies. She teased. Sadly, my mom died centuries ago. She said with little to no sign of sadness. So who are you brats anyway? She asked as she crossed her arms. No manners at all. Akeno giggled as she raised her left hand, lightning sparking through her fingers. Well, I'm in a pretty bad mood. She growled as her halo bursts into existence and her eyes turned slit with her sclera burning black. Middlet. Kalwerner shouted as she neared the Lolita-dressed blonde. The three noted she was scuffled a bit. Her clothes were torn in various places. Ignoring the devils, she looked at the shorter fallen angel. They've begun the ritual. She said. What she shouted in rage, her jaw unhinged as her sharp dentures was in full view. They were supposed to do that until next month. What the fuck happened? Onasik took over while you were gone, turned the others against Rainer and myself. Rainer was injured and is locked inside one of the room with ruins on it, thus cutting her off from us. She made sure I escaped before they caught her. I'm going to murder that asshole. The blonde growled as she made her way to the church. I'll deal with you two when I'm done killing that idiot. She said as she turned to walk, but a lightning strike just before she took a step. The Lolita growled. Kalwerner, go ahead. She ordered as she turned halfway to the two devils, a pink spear of light appearing in her left hand as her wings were ruffling against the back of her dress, begging to come out. I'll deal with these two. She mentally patted them on the back as they stood firm. Damn. Issei clicked his teeth. That's a strong aura. There must be a lot of priests gathered there. Kiba summarized as she gazed at the lightless church, the halberd resting against a tree by her side. Hanako looked at the brunette. You should be glad that we came with you, senpai. She intoned, her face, as always, being neutral. I'm really glad. You girls a good team. The brunette nodded as he sighed. Hanako then turned to the church and stood up, walking out in the open. Hanako? Issei called the small teen as he followed her. They know that we're here anyway. She pointed out as she stood before the front door. Without a word, she kicked the door open, the other two standing at either of her sides. Unknown to the three devils, they were being watched by a black cat. Now most people would not question this, but the feline has two tails and golden eyes that held intellect, cunningness, mischievousness, and sadness. The eyes currently following three, its gaze mostly concentrated on the white-haired devil. Shirin. The though whisked through its mind. The view would have been horrifying to any God-fearing person. The pews were broken, statues of the savior crumbled. At the front of the building stood a broken cross. There were also a few bodies on the ground with some scorch marks along the walls. Damn. Issei muttered as he looked around. They really did a number to this place. Looks like a fight happened in here too. Kiba added as she held her halberd at the ready. The three members of Ria's peerage looked around as they stepped further into the building, searching her in Kaneko's case, sensing for any threats. Someone's coming. She muttered. They heard clapping, and Issei saw a familiar person stepping from the side. Hey, hey, hey. He sang. Been a while, you shitty devil. He crooned. I feel so happy that I might actually kill you this time. He chuckled. Freed. Issei growled as his eyes turned to slit and his sclera burned red, his fangs jutted. Never thought I'd meet the same fucking devil twice. This must be fate. He raised his hands high with a cackle. But you know. I'm pretty damn strong, you know. So meeting me a second time is indeed a blessing. He then pulled out his gun and sword, activated the latter as a magical circle slowly rotates over the former. He then gained a menacing look. There won't be a third time. Where's Asia? He shouted. You know. He tapped his chin with his gun. I still didn't get to plug that bitch yet. He scowled. That hurts my pride. He licked his gun, ignoring the looks of disgust from the three devils. About your nun bitch, she's underground. He tapped the floor with his light sword. Tell us how to get there. Kiba said as she pointed the halberd at the rogue priest, her eyes turning to slit as her hair became slightly wild and her sclera burned red. I ain't telling you bitches shit. He pointed the gun at them, the magical circle growing before firing a barrage of light bullets at the three. Since you three motherfuckers are going to die. He cackled madly. Kiba leaped forward, twirling the halberd like a fan and blocking the bullets. Then we'll just beat it out of you. She shouted. Kaneko. Hey. She said as she threw one of the long chairs over the spray of blessed bullets and was falling towards the man. Freed quickly stopped firing and slashed the bench in half. You're a bratty flat-chested little bitch aren't ya? What's the matter? The milk not helping you get some jugs on that board of yours? He teased. Kaneko's eyebrow twitched ever so slightly as her sclera reddened and her eyes turned to slit. Oh, the knight in pawn thought. Speaking about Kaneko's underdeveloped body was considered a taboo. The rook grabbed two of the benches and launched them after the other, going to the others and repeating the process. Freed was running away from the raining benches, slashing and shooting at the ones that were getting too close to him. He also attempted to shoot at the other devils, but the small white-haired girl practically stomps the ground to raise rocks to block the bullets. Ha! Kiba swung her halberd, aiming to lop the crazed man's head off, but was blocked. Insolent lost and horned lamb. Freed shouted as he parried the axe-type weapon and swung his blade low, hoping to cut off the blonde's leg. But before he can, Issei with his twice critical activated, knocked the blade out of the way, making an opening for the knight. Thank you Issei. She grinned. No problem. The young Hyoudo returned the gesture. Ah fuck me he groaned before he was slashed from his right shoulder down to his left hip, the force of the blow being powerful enough to not only give him a gash at that length, but also threw him back against the podium. Fuck he groaned. Alright. Issei cheered. Not so tough now, huh? He taunted. You shitty little fucks. The man shouted in rage as he busted out of the rubble that fell on him, throwing the three off guard by how quick he recuperated. He reached Kiba within seconds and had his gun aimed at the blonde's head, ready to pull the trigger. Kiba's eyes widened as the muzzle was pressed to her forehead, no way to think of a way to get out of the way. Down. Issei shouted as he pushed Kiba down just as another one of the benches was launched, smashing into the insane man. Thanks Issei. She sighed. Looks like I'll have to get serious too. She frowned as the halberd glowed brightly, its form changing to a normal gladius with a gold hilt. Second later the entire blade turned black, as if the darkness devoured it. Raya! Fred shouted as he stepped out, his left shoulder smashed as his right leg was twisted in an odd angle. You fucking pieces of shits. Do you fucking know how long it's gonna take to heal these? I don't care. Kiba said as she used her speed to appear by his damaged left. In all honesty, I despise the church. She swung her blade. Fried quickly turned, his light sword in his right hand, and clashed against the shadow sword. Light beats dark. Darkness devours light. Kiba replied as the shadow blade began to warp and absorb the light sword. What? The priest yelped in shock as he leaped back. Kiba held her sword at the ready. Shinsei no Keshigomu, Holy Eraser. Kiba introduced the blade. The dark sword that eats the light. So you got a sacred gear too, huh? He growled. Nice. Issei nodded as he held out his left arm. Twice critical. He called out. Let's go. He clenched his fist, the green gem glowing. Boost. A voice cried from it. You're all starting to piss me the fuck off. Fried yelled as he fixed his damaged leg and shoulder. Just then Kalawiner appeared, looking at the scene before her. Middled frowned as she looked at the two devils. Is that all? I thought you said that you would destroy me. She taunted. The Lolita-dressed graceless angel stood there with a pink light spear over her left shoulder, her clothes slightly tattered and her ribbon missing, allowing her hair to flow freely. Rhea scowled at the blonde, wondering how one fallen angel can take on the both of them. Her clothes were in the same condition as the blonde's, her skirt being ripped at the edges and her left sleeve missing. The Kendo giggled, liking the fact that the enemy was still alive, so she can cause her more pain in the near future. Her attire changed completely, wearing a torn Maiko's outfit that consists of a torn white shihakusho with wide shoulder-less sleeves and tattered red hakama pants. The fallen angel sighed in annoyance. A barrier domed over them, and several of the rogue priests appeared around them, each brandishing light swords. I don't remember asking for assistance. Middle muttered to the closest robed man. We didn't come to help. Was the reply. I see. The blonde frowned as she snapped her right fingers, summoning several purple arcane circles around the barrier. I have no time for this. Be burned by the fire of Ifrit. She snapped her fingers once again. Riaz and Akeno watched in awe, fascination, shock, and slight fear as the arcane lead of red flames formed like claws, burning and cutting down the fools that were dumb enough to attack. Akeno. Riaz said as she raised her hand, her queen doing the same. Another set of arcane circles, these being red and yellow, appear among the fire claw spewing circles, letting strikes of lightning and balls of red and black energy, shocking and disintegrating the other priests. One last priest slammed against a tree, a blast from a lightning knocking him to it. He groaned in pain and was about to stand up, but a sharp tip was felt against his neck. He looked up and instantly controlled his bladder. Before him stood Middled, being flanked by Riaz and Akeno, glaring at him. Now you're going to tell me. Riaz began. A flaming ball bursts over her open left palm, her red sclera with green-blue slit eyes narrowed. What are my servants going through? She growled. Kaneko leaped back as a concentrated golden bullet bursts where she was, destroying the small area and the long bench she was about to throw. Dear kitty, kitty. Fried laughed with tongue lolled out and shot at the airborne white-haired devil. Ha! The brunette shouted, tossing a golden light spear at the bullet and cancelling it. God fuck damn it. The insane man shouted in anger. Kaneko landed and was about to charge. Kaneko-chan. Issei called his cowhide as both kept their eyes on the priest who was duking it out with both Kalawiner and Kiba. I'll need a promotion. He asked. Kaneko nodded, placing her hands on her chest and closed her eyes, a blue aura surrounding them both. Accepted. She muttered as she opened her eyes. Thanks. He smiled. So want to help with this or let me have all the fun? Fried just blocked a spear with his light sword as he held Kiba back with his gun. What kind of twilight fuck rainbows is this? An angel, fallen one at that, and a devil working together. I have my reasons. Was Kalawiner answer before she swung her left leg, smashing her heeled shoe against the man's nose and sending him back a few paces. Kiba leaped in, brandishing a sword of ice and fire in his left and right respectfully, burning him and chilling him at the same time. Promotion. Issei shouted to gain the wounded man's attention, the brunette and Kaneko rushing at Fried. Rook. The chess symbol of the rook appeared on his forehead as a red glow covered his body. Stop running at me. The red-eyed man shouted as he let out a barrage of bullets at the duo. The rook is a chariot. It possesses ridiculous defensive ability. The bullet simply bounced off the two as they charged at him. What the fucking fuck? The priest shouted in disbelief. And has monstrous attack power. Ha! Ha! The two devils shouted. Well, Kaneko merely said, Issei smashing his fist into the man's face as Kaneko struck his chest. Ow! He cried as he smashed against the cross, breaking it and getting a chunk of wood pierced through his left shoulder blade and kicking up dust. Kalawiner remained in the air, a golden light spear in her right hand posed to strike. You fucking motherfuckers. Fried's voice echoed around the church as the dust settled. He stood there panting as he held his bleeding shoulder. Where's Asia, you bastard? Issei growled, his gauntlet hand flexing as the sharp nails glint in the moonlight. Like I'm going to tell a shit-stained devil where that sweet piece of blonde ass is. The red-eyes man pulled out a small grenade from his coat and threw it down, revealing that it was a smoke bomb. I'm not gonna get beaten by some shitty devils and fallen bird. His voice echoed. Come back here. Calrunner growled. He's gone, Calrunner-san. Issei sighed as the red glow and mark on his forehead faded away. Thanks for the help though. The brunette flicked her hair as she looked at the brown-haired devil. You're Rainer's boyfriend. She placed her hand on her left hip and cocked it to the side, making sure that her bust bounced in the movement. That makes you more than okay in my book. She sent a sly smile as she noted how quick his eyes caught her partially exposed memories. Issei's eyes widened. Yuma-chan. He shouted. I'll get her. The brunette held out her hand as she summoned another golden spear. She tossed it a wall, and it shattered by the piercing force of the unholy weapon, revealing a flight of stairs that leads down. Take that route to Asia. Hopefully you're not too late. What are they going to do to her? Issei asked. They planned of removing her sacred gear. Calrunner replied. Kiba's eyes widened. What? That can kill her. Issei gained a shocked look. We have to save her. Without a second thought, the young Hyoudou rushed towards the hallway. Look after Yuma-chan please. He shouted as Kiba and Kaneko followed him. If a sacred gear is removed from the wielder, he or she will die. Kiba stated, prompting the others to book it. Ria scoffed as she burns the remains of the mutilated body of the last rogue priest, having forcing information from him. This is why I hate these kinds of situations. She muttered as she turned her attention to the standing fallen angel. Middle's back was to them as she looked at the direction of the abandoned church. Well. She breathed. How about a truce? She proposed. Feeling weak under the knees. Akeno teased with a sly smile. Middle glanced back. Be lucky I have a plan that involves your little pawn. The blonde gave a smile before she released her wings and flew up towards the church. Akeno. Hi. Issei leaped from the 10th step to the floor, landing on a crouch before looking up. So you made it, huh? Donasik sneered at the standing brunette. He was standing by an altar that was 30 stairs up and before a large black cross with pale gray circuit lines. Donasik. The brown-haired devil growled out. Calm down, Issei. Kiba placed her hand on his shoulder to stop him from rushing. You're right in time for the ritual. The fedora-wearing graceless angel grinned wickedly as he stepped aside, allowing the three devils to see the bound and chained Asia. The nun wearing a white strap-top shirt with shorts. Asia-chan. Issei shouted as he stepped forward, prompting many robed rouges to step out and brandish their light blades at the three devils. Donasik ignored them and turned to the bound nun. I've been waiting for years to gain this power. He grinned as he held his hand out to the blonde, the cross-circuit lines glow a bright green color. The nun's eyes scrunched as she felt something in her being taken. She then opened her eyes as she screamed in pain, green electricity coursing from the cross through her body. Asia. The brunette shouted as he ran towards the group, not liking the sounds of her pain-filled scream. Get the hell out of my way. He yelled as he smashed through the humans, knocking them aside with swift punches and ducking under several of the swings. One rushed behind the young Hyoudou and was ready to slash him down. HN. Kiba intercepted the light blade with her dark elemental one, devouring the light and slashing his from the shoulder down. Go on, Issei. She yelled as she took down another priest. Oh help your friend. Kaneko said as her petite body bowled several grown men aside with her strength. Kaneko-chan, Kiba-chan. He awed as the Rukan Knight of Ria's peerage fight off the remaining priests, his legs pushing him closer to the screaming Asia. Asia was in pain. So much pain. She can feel something important being forcefully pulled out of her against her will. Her throat felt hoarse as she cried out and tears streamed from her green eyes. With a final gasp, a green glow emerged from her chest as her eyes dimmed slightly. Her faded eyes looked as the brunette was rushing up the stairs. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei. That was her last thought before darkness claimed her sight. You bastard. Issei raged as he leaped up the remaining stairs, his gauntlet arm cocked back to strike the Kalisk-ranked fallen angel. The fedora-wearing man leaped back, his wings opening and allowing him to remain in the air. I'll give you two some time alone. He chuckled as he stayed there, showing that actually meant what he said. In fact, I'll give you some privacy. Donasik added as he snapped his fingers, an arcane circle appearing below the pair. Issei. Kiba shouted before she and Kaneko witnessed him and the nun disappear in a flash. What did you do? She shouted as she readied her blade. She glared at the floating angel as he held Asia's sacred gear in his hands. Simply sent them upstairs. He droned as he placed the two rings to his chest, his body absorbing the sacred gear and gave of a small green glow over his body. Ah, he sighed as he grinned arrogantly at the two devils, beaten and cut bodies of the ruse priests among them. Now then. He held up his right hand, a light spear of his design appearing over his palm and grabs it. How should I deal with you two strays? Issei blinked and shook his head due to the sudden transportation. He ignored the change of scenery and released the bound nun, catching her limp body in his arms and gently holding her to him. Asia-chan. he somberly said as he gazed at the blonde. Sono così dispiace Hyoudou, I'm so sorry. He apologized as he picked her up and carried her to one of the still whole and stable benches. Signor Issei, Mr. Issei, she whispered as she felt her body weight pressed against his own. Sei venuto, you came. She smiled weakly. Lo sapevo ci si sareb venuto, I knew that you would come. Shhh. He hushed her. Sono qui, I'm here. His eyes glistened a bit. Aderimo vostro sacro gear indietro dopo si da il culo di quel ragazzo opposto, we'll get your sacred gear back after we kick that guy's ass, okay? Resisti, hang in there. He begged. Stiamo per tirarti fuori di qui sarà tutto finito, va bene, we're going to get you out of here and it'll be all over, okay? He smiled as a few tears leaked from his eyes. Asia's smile, despite her weakened state, it looked very bright. She held up her hand, the brunette gently grasping it. Stiamo andando a divertirsi insieme, we're going to have fun together. Siamo in grado di assai un po' di più, we can go out some more. Giocare di più, play more games. Possiamo andare un parco di divertimenti troppo, we can go to an amusement park too. Sono sicuro ci vi divertirete, I'm sure you'll have fun. Si può fare più amici, giusto, you can make more friends too, right? Diba, Kaneko, Akeno, Rias. He listed off. By now tears were simply flowing from his brown eyes. Sono sicuro ci I miei amici accettero anche voi, I'm sure my other friends will accept you too. He choked as he felt the blonde's hands gently stroke his cheeks. Non è stato per tanto tempo ma io sono così felice di averti incontrato, it wasn't for so long, but I'm so happy to have met you. She said softly as she looked at him. Cosa stai dicendo, what are you saying, Asia? He shook his head. Si stai andando ad essere bene, you're going to be fine. He sniffed. Stiamo andando a molto, we're going to fine. He held her hands to his face. Sai sono così tanti posti ci voglio mostrarvi, there's so many places I want to show you. Karaoke bar, pista bowling, karaoke bars, bowling alleys. He choked as he took a deep breath. Noi faremo anche ottenere qualche raku per voi, we will even get some more raku for you. Tears fell on the nun's face, mixing with her own as she looks at him with her green eyes. E poi sai buddiamo una grande festa per voi, and then we'll throw a big party for you. Un ridicolmente enorme, a ridiculously huge one. He smiled. Asia smiled. Stai piangendo per me, you're crying for me, her eyes shimmered. Posso reposar la mia testa sulla tua spalla, can I rest my head on your shoulder? She asked. Sicuro, sure. He nodded, finally accepting the blonde's fate. He sat up straight, placing the young nun to his side as he held her close by her waist. Asia sighed as she rested her head on the brunette's shoulder, a serene smile on her face. She then placed her hands onto his, her thumb brushing over it. She then took a deep breath. And sing. The scene that Rias, Akeno, and Middle came to. Play Gunslinger Girless 01 End, dopo il sogno, after the dream. Ascolta, dolce Maria Redenami, ti prego il mio sorriso, listen, sweet Mary, restore, I beg, my pleasantness. Ascolta, dolce Maria Redenami, ti prego il mio sorriso, listen, sweet Mary, restore, I beg, my pleasantness. Ah. Si, del mio camino sai la propizia stella. Pervenir bella sera la mortemi, ah. Yes, be the guiding star of my path, to come with you, sweet will be death for me. Ascolta, Salve Maria, suo dul suoi tristi accenti oda il tuo pietoso cor. Listen, Hail Mary, his sorrow, his sad accents, let him hear the mercy of your heart. A ti chi benedetta fra tutte, Maria, voli la pres mia, personalzi a ti, to you who is blessed among women, Mary, my prayer flies, pure it rises to you. Ascolta, Santa Maria Redenami, ti prego, la mia calma, listen, Saint Mary, restore, I pray, my calmness. All anima cianella di ricoverardi in braccio. Let all souls who cry take refuge in her arms. De. Rompi, Maria, il laccio chila impedes il voi, ah. Break, Mary, the trap that prevents you. Ascolta, dolce Maria, suo dul, suoi tristi accenti oda il tuo pietoso cor. Listen, sweet Mary, his sorrow, his sad accents, let him hear the mercy of your heart. Grazie, Signor Issei, thank you Mr. Issei. She whispered before planting a weak kiss on his cheek, a small sigh escaping her lips as her head slowly lowered and her hand stopped rubbing his. Issei sat there silent, tears refusing to stop flowing, continued to run down his cheeks. Why? He whispered as he gently stood, placing the now deceased blonde on the bench and folding her hands over her stomach. Why did you have to die, Asia? He shook as he stood up and rubbed his tears with the sleeves of his blazer. God must really hate me, huh? He chuckled. I made a good friend and she dies. You were a kind girl that'd cure anyone who was injured, even a devil like me. He rubbed her cheek, still feeling the lingering warmth. I know you're there, God. He whispered. Don't take her. Don't take a dear friend from me, he pressed his forehead to the blonde's. She didn't do anything wrong. She just wanted friends. Grow a normal life. But you would probably ignore the words of a devil, right? Issei looked sadly at her pawn. Issei. Akeno clasped her hands together. This is bullshit. Middle growled as she clenched her fists. Did her life mean nothing just because she's friends with a devil, he shouted. Please. How pathetic. Donasik's voice cut through. A devil, begging in the church. He scoffed. Disgusting. Issei remained silent as he stood. Donasik, he said his name with venom meant to kill ancient creatures of the past. Do you believe your pawn will beat him? Middle asked. I have faith in my peerage. Riaz replied confidently. You better believe him. A tired Rainer said as she was led by Kalwerner. The collar-scranked fallen angel opened his coat, showing a large gash over his right side. Your little sword-swinging girl managed to do this little scratch to me. He chuckled. Where are Kiba-chan and Kaneko-chan? He asked as he began to walk towards the taller man, his eyes overshadowed by his hair. Simply beaten. Donasik answered. Fucking them would be a waste. I like my woman older and much more developed anyways. He answered the young devil as the rings appeared on his fingers, placing the hand over the wound, and it closes with no scar. Such a wonderful power, very worthy for someone like me. Like I'd care of some bullshit crap like that. Issei growled as he looked at fallen angel, his eyes slid and his sclera red. Don't think just because you've held a girl in your arms mean that you've grown a pair of balls, brat. Donasik hissed as his jaw unhinged, teeth sharpened, halo bursts into existence, eyes turned to slit, and his sclera burned black. He then summoned his light spear. Asia never discriminated between humans, devils, angels, and fallen angels. He glared at him. Give them back. You have no right to demand me, devil. Donasik bellowed as he threw his summoned spear. Issei dodged left, letting the unholy weapon fly by. I'm going to kill you, making sure that no one suffers by your hands again. Sacred gear. He summoned his gauntlet. Dragon boost. Donasik's eyes widened slightly as a swirling energy of green with red lines spiral around him. Issei tensed his legs, using his training with Rei, Kiba, and Kaneko as a foundation. He bursts forward, his body launching at a speed that made the fallen angel shocked, suffering a hard blow to the chest. Gua. He coughed a glob of spit and blood as he was sent crashing to a wall, smashing through the structure. Just how many times will I be smashed against a fucking wall? He mentally grunted as he stood up, dusting the dirt off his clothes and healed his wounds. So you've gotten a bit stronger. He scoffed. Let's see how fast you are. He said as he created another light spear and tossed it. Deja. Many eyes widened at the sight, most too far to stop the attack. Promotion. Knight. Issei cried desperately. His body glowed red as the knight chest piece appeared on his forehead. Force promotion, Riaz exclaimed in shock, her queen was in equal expression. No way. Kiba said as she leaning against the wall. Her clothes were torn, revealing her purple sports bra and part of her matching color shorts. Kaneko sighed as she stood beside the blonde, having carried her up the stairs. Her shirt was gone, leaving her in her yellow dotted pink bra over her budding bust. Her skirt simply had some small rips at the edges and waist. Issei moved with speed, passing the fallen's weapon and taking the hit in his chest, missing his heart. KCH. He gritted his teeth at the pain. Donasik sneered at the injured devil. Did you forget that our attacks are dangerous to your kind? It's practically poison to you spawns. Issei gripped the spear, ignoring the fact that pain was ebbing away, even as the steam escaped from the wound. What the hell is going on with me? He thought as he managed to pull out the spear and toss it aside. Issei. Riaz and Rainer shouted as the brunette stumbled. So how did that feel, He jeered. Did it hurt? Were you in excruciating pain? He laughed. It hurts even more since you're a fucking low-class devil. Issei panted. Compared to Asia's suffering, Yuma-chan and her friends being betrayed by you fucks, Ria's pain, Akeno's pain, Kaneko's pain, Kiba's pain. He stood up, his wings bursting out of his back as the gem in his gauntlet glows. This is how they feel, then I'll gladly take that pain from them. Boost. The gem flashed. Impressive. Donasik mocked. But as long as I have twilight healing, I am invincible. He threw 2 more light spears, catching Issei's thighs. Jaya. The devil cried in pain as his legs were pinned. He gripped the spears and yanked them out, blood spurting from the wounds. Cut the bullshit. He yelled as he was forced back. A fedora-wearing fallen angel simply scoffed. You're only prolonging your suffering, boy. Nausama. Issei muttered as he kneeled on one knee. Oh? The man regained his glamour. Feeling bad already? Must have reached your limit. He scoffed. I don't need anything else. He muttered. Boost. What the hell are you gibbering about? The Collis Grank wondered as he summoned the larger spear. Whatever. He held his arms back. You have nothing but a twice critical, a joke of an item in my eyes. Give me strength, oh great Mao. He grunted as he stood up, his legs shaking by the weight of his own body. What the hell? Donasik thought as he hesitated for a while. "To beat this motherfucker," he cried out, glaring at the shocked winged man. "Impossible." He took a step back. "You have to be burning up from the inside. A low-class devil like you shouldn't be able to alleviate light attacks." He held the spear and tossed it, aiming for the brunette's heart. "Promotion. Rook." The pawn shouted as a red aura surrounded him once again, the rook mark appearing on his forehead. Again. Riaz was pleased and shocked to remember. Issei grabbed the spear, the tip mere inched away from his chest. "I'm in pain alright." He ignored the burning sensation in his hand. "I'm in a shitload of it. I feel like I'll pass out at any moment. I feel like my legs can simply break just by carrying my body." He staggered forward, the fallen angel unintentionally taking a step back. "But I'm so fucking pissed off that I don't care what happens to me." He shouted as his left arm glows from his fingers to his elbow, dimming to reveal his fingers being encased in red claws, as the gem shines brightly gold ruined symbols around it and two gold-colored protrusion come out at the sides below his elbow. Explosion. The gem cried out. A mid-class shock wave. "How?" His eyes widened. "No, it's stronger than that. That can't be. You are a weak spawn. Nothing you can do should make a simple twice critical emit such power. You're going to pay for the shit you did." He growled as he bared his teeth at the four-winged man. Donasik hissed, his jaw unhinged as he spreads his wings. "Don't get cocky, you fucking brat." He bellowed as he launched himself at the youth, his wings giving him the needed boost. "I refuse to lose to an inferior being such as yourself." The graceless angel shouted as he swung for a punch. Issei's right hand shot up, with the power of the rook, his strength and defense increased greatly and caught Donasik's fist, a shockwave blasting from the impact. The brown-haired devil gripped the older man's fist with his temporary borrowed buff, feeling that graceless man was about to step back. "Don't you dare run away." Issei glared. "I haven't run away from you during this whole fight." He pulled the man forward, cocking his armored hand back as the gem glowed once again. "Dragon fist." The gem shouted, a burning aura surrounding the sacred gear. In both anger and frustration, Donasik summoned another spear to stab the devil. But Issei's fire-armored fist smashed through the spear and hitting the man in his chest, sending a way through the window and outside the building, a trail of smoke showing where he was launched. Issei panted as the red glow around his body and the rook symbol faded. His body was bruised and his wound still bleeding. I did it." He laughed softly. "Served you right, you bastard." He muttered as he fell back. The flutter of wings was heard before Issei was caught by a pair of arms, two large mounts pressed to his back. "It's alright, Ice-kun." Rainer soothed the teen as she wrapped her arms around his stomach. She then chuckled. "I honestly didn't think that you'd beat him," she confessed. Riaz watched the two, a twinge of emotion going through for some unknown reason. She shook her head as she made her way to them. "Congratulations, Issei." She smiled at his tired grin. "I had faith that you would have beaten him. Ria-senpai." He bowed his head. "I'm sorry for the trouble I caused," he said. "It's quite fine, Issei." Riaz said as she kneeled before the brunette and rubbed his cheek, ignoring the small hiss that escaped the fallen angel's lips. "Calm down, Rainer." Middle chuckled at the taller winged woman. "The last thing I need is to hold you back," she teased. Alwerner chuckled at her friend's flushed face. "Haneko, retrieve the deformed crow, will you please?" she asked the white-haired girl. "Yes, but you." She nodded as she walked out to retrieve the beaten man, following the scent of burned flesh. A bit later there were the sounds of a tree being pulled out, a scream, and bones breaking, and a crash. Middle stepped forward and stood behind Rainer. She placed her hands on the taller woman's back as they glowed, healing the winged woman of her fatigue. "Feeling better?" She smiled as the woman sighed and pulled the tired brunette more into her embrace. "Much." She answered as she pressed her cheek to her devil lover, sending a smug look in her eyes at the slightly frowning Gremory heiress. "I brought him, but you." Kaneko said as she dragged Donasik, his wrists and wings broken and twisted obviously by the white tea. "He tried to use the nun's sacred gear as he flied away, so I disabled him," she said as she tossed him several meters away from her, his body painfully sliding over the pavement. Riaz nodded as she stood up with a bend, intentionally flashing her dark purple thong at the brunette since he was still sitting in the ground. She cast a smile at the fallen angel's scowl before making her way to defeated male. "I just saw Ria-senpai's panty," was the only thought that flashed through Issei's mind. Riaz approached the downed man. "We meet again, deformed crow Donasik." Riaz cooed, her slit eyes in red sclera glaring at the man that had dare hurt her peerage. "Riaz Gremory." He gritted the Redeed's name through his teeth. "It's funny. You said that should we ever meet again, I would die," she reminded him. "Now look at you. Beaten, battered, and broken, by my peerage. How does that make you feel?" She smiled rather mockingly at him. She held out a torn cloth. "Your men are dead, blasted away into the dust to join the wind," she said coldly. "Blasted?" He grunted as he tried to lift himself up, but Kaneko slammed her foot on him, her face impassive, but her eyes were cat-like slit in red sclera. "Stay down," she only said. "Butchu is known for the Kurenai no Kami no Aojo, crimson-haired ruin princess, or Hakai no Haim, princess of destruction," Kiba informed her peerage member. "Destruction and ruin." He blinked at the blonde. Never knew she had such titles. She made such a mess. Akeno giggled. "How dare you?" he growled. "And you three are traitors." He yelled at Rainer, Middled, and Kalwerner. "Wait until Azazel hears about this. Please." Middled scoffed. "He's too fix in his projects to even deal with this shit, even if he knew what was going on. Makes me wonder why he's a leader if he's such a work-obsessed idiot." "Rainer, you would betray Azazel after he took you in and helped you," he shouted. The dark-haired woman simply hugged Issei. "Issei will take much more care of me from now." "Kalwerner," he began. "Nothing you say will save you, Donaseek." The brunette growled at him. "This has to be a joke," he muttered. "He planned everything. He promised me power unimaginable," he shouted. Riaz ignored the man as she turned to her pawn. "So that's the form of your sacred gear," she stated. The brunette looked to his transformed arm. "Yeah." He nodded. "I didn't realize it changed during the fight. Now it looks more like a dragon's claw." "The crimson dragon's claw," Riaz said to herself before she smiled. Deformed crow Donaseek, Issei's sacred gear is not a mere twice critical. "What?" the man shouted. "What the hell do you mean?" "Its form only changed," he added. "Known to double the user's power every 10 seconds, allowing anyone who possessed the sacred gear is even able to kill a god or even the Mayu in power alone." "It can't be." Donaseek's eyes widen, fear evidence in those ocular organs. "One of the 13 Long-Inus, Securite no Kenju, Gauntlet of the Red Dragon Emperor, boosted gear." She grinned at the fear-stricken man. The three female angels wore shocked expression as they heard this and looked at the even surprised Hyoudou. "Nonsense," Donaseek bellowed. "No way should a child like him have such a god-killing weapon. That sacred gear is able to bring ruin to any high-tier beings." His head was then slammed onto the floor by Kaneko's right hand and held it there. She was getting tired of his talking. "Do not let this small victory cloud your mind, Issei," Riaz advised her pawn. "The Securite no Kenju, Gauntlet of the Red Dragon Emperor, is not almighty, but it is potent. It'll take time before it reaches the level to kill a god. The only reason you won was because this deformed crow underestimated you and became far too desperate when he realized he was losing." Issei nodded at that, making sure to train himself more in the near future. Kaneko break his legs, Kiba cut off his hands. "We'll need to give Twilight healing back to Asia after we deal with this filth," Riaz commanded Urukan Knight. "Middle-san and Kalwerner-san, please pin him to the wall." Issei kindly asked the two fallen angels as he glared at the man that killed his friend. Kaneko mutely nodded at the command as she leaped up by a few inches. Smash. Crack. Donaseek cried in pain as he felt his knees shattered, his legs bent at odd angles due to the small white tea twisting her feet on his knees. Kaneko ignored the man's cry as she held him up by his arms, holding them up for Kiba. The blonde knight walked forward, summoning Firebrand, the blade of fire, and cut off his hands, the wound cauterizing by the searing heat from the blade and adding more pain to the suffering graceless angel. Her slit eyes with the red sclera narrowed at the man's pleas to stop. Kaneko then tossed him to the nearest wall, about 10 feet away, with tremendous force, his body slamming into it. Before Donaseek could have a chance to fall off the wall, he was pinned to by 2 gold-colored spears in his arm near his elbow and 2 pink ones in his thigh. By then his eyes were rolled to the back of his head and his screaming became hoarse. "This is the end for you, Donaseek," Riaz claimed. "Issei, come," she said to the brunette devil. "I will help with the final blow." "Thank you Butchu," he said as Rainer helped him up and walked him to the left of the retreat and before pinned fallen angel. "Place you hand palm up over my own," Riaz said as she held up her left, Issei doing as instructed. "Now gather some magic from your core as I send some of mine. Your magic isn't high enough, but with training, it will be tremendous." She smiled as she sees a small marble-sized green-red orb floating on the brunette's palm. She frowned slightly at seeing Rainer's hand between her own and Issei's hand. "What are you doing?" she asked as she kept her concentration at sending her magic, now through the female fallen angel's hand to her only pawn in her peerage. "This bastard is the reason why Issei suffered so much." She glared at the man. "If he's going to die, at least let me be a part of it," she said as the small red-green orb gained a mixed color of crimson, black, and red. The 3 colors swirling with the orb and grew to the size of a basketball, the attack giving off a mixture of unholy and devil aura. "Disappear from my sight, Donaseek," Issei said as the brown slit in his eyes gained a green tint. "Wait," he rasps out before his body was engulfed in the triformed attack, erasing it to nothing but a scant few feathers. The green glow caught the group's attention. Looking to it, they see the rings in a green ball of transparent light floating and gliding towards Issei. The brunette held out his hand, the green glow floating over his palm. He smiled as he handed them to Riaz, who allowed the sacred gear to float onto her hands. "Let's give these back to her," she said. Riaz, Peerage and 3 fallen angels stood before Asia, who was laid on the ground with a red rotating arcane under. "Hear me, lost soul who has died with regret." Riaz spoke, her voice echoed around the church as winds began to blow through the abandoned building. Her wings were out and her eyes lit with red sclera. Her aura grew as the arcane rotated faster. "I, Riaz Gremory, summon you to your body so that you begin a life anew. As my servant and friend." The chest piece floated, this one the form of a bishop, the half white, while the other half was black. A mutated piece. She thought as the rings floated to the nun's hand, slipping onto her middle fingers. Another member to add to the family. She mentally smiled as the evil piece floated over the nun's chest and sank into it, the arcane fading as her body gave a small red glow, and soon that faded as well. The group waited in bated silence, all hoping that the ritual was a success. Seconds later, Asia opened her eyes, gasping as she took the first breath of her new life. She sat up as her eyes looked around frantically, the last thing she remembered was singing before darkness claimed her sight. "She seems okay to me." Calorner smiled. "Asia?" Issei whispered as tears threatened to leave his eyes. "Are you alright?" he asked as Rainer let his arm go. Asia looked at the brunette and gasps. "I Issei-san." She replied in Japanese. The young Hyoudou smiled as he hugged her, his shoulders shaking as he sobbed on the blonde. "I'm glad. I'm so glad you're okay." He sniffed. The blonde's eyes were wide, but they soon relaxed as she smiled. Wrapping her arms around the brunette's back, she combed his hair with her left hand. "Thank you, Issei-san," she said as a tear came from her eye. Riaz smiled. "Well then, Issei. I hope you look after your cowhide," she said. The brunette looked to her king. "What do you mean?" he wondered. "Well, she will need a place to stay." Akeno giggled. "Is that okay with you, Asia?" he asked the revived nun now turned devil. "Yes please." She nodded. Riaz nodded. She then turned to the 3 fallen angels. "So what are you going to do?" "Obviously going at Issei's," Rainer said. "I'm also defecting from Grigory." "So my Calorner said." "Well then boy, looks like you have 4 beautiful young ladies staying at your house." Middle teased the brunette. "I hope your parents don't mind." Issei gulped. Both his parents have a knack for jumping to conclusions, especially his mother. "But I think we should do something first," Middle said as she locked eyes with the brunette. "Issei, will you please stand before us?" she kindly asked. Without a thought, he gently released the blonde nun and walked forward to them. The 3 fallen angels kneeled before the brown-haired devil, shocking all the other occupants in the area. Rainer and Calorner allowed their wings to emerge from their backs, showing the one set of wings, the rank of a crave. What shocked the devils was the amount of wings that fluttered out of Middle's back. Ria's eyes widen. "A sieve," she gasps. Middle looked at the brunette, her 7 sets of wings fluttering slightly. "I, Middle, I, Rainer, I, Calorner, pledge our loyalty, life, and fate to you, Hyoudo Issei. We will follow your commands and protect your body from harm, using our own as a shield." They decreed as they went and pluck a feather from their wings, another feather instantly growing back to replace it. "We offer our feather, a part of ourselves and proof that we place our lives along with yours." They then held their feathers to the young Hyoudou, the separated plum changing to pink, red, and gold, respectfully. "Take this and we will be yours to command. And if Middleton Calorner are lucky, you'll have 3 women as your girlfriends." Rainer teased. Issei was stunned. These 3 fallen angel, easily stronger than him, have pledged their loyalty to him. He swallowed. To reject them is like kicking them out of the streets. He mentally sighed. I accept," he said before the offered feathers glowed and flew to his right arm, marking the skin and staying there. He passed his hand over the feathers and was shocked that he felt his own skin. The 3 stood up and smiled, their wings returning into their backs. Rhea sighed. "This will be a lot to take in." The cat was on the windowsill, its golden eyes seeing everything. The feline then turned and leaped away, just as the white-haired devil looked at its direction. "We'll meet soon, my little Shirin." The voice echoed as it vanished in a purple arcane circle. Issei opened the front door to his home. "I'm home," he called out into the house. Not hearing anything, the brunette wondered if his parents decided to go out. He then turned to the 4 behind him. "Come on in. I'll fix something to eat." He smiled. "This is where Issei-san lives." "Bellissimo, it's very beautiful." The nun revived as a devil complimented. "Feels like a welcoming home." Calorner said. "Not bad. Not bad at all." Middle smiled. "It's good to be back here again." Rainer grinned. "Ice-kun." His mother mumbled as she and her husband came down the stairs. It was well into the night and they heard the front door open, a bat in the mother's hand, while the father was armed with a golf club. They then relaxed when they saw Issei, along with 4 other young ladies. "Hey, Mom, Dad," he greeted. "Sorry for being so late, but I was chosen to be a host to these girls. This Asia Argento, from Italy." Middle Grissa from Germany. Kalwerner Trista from Russia. And Amano Yuma. Don't worry, they know how to speak Japanese, he lied smoothly. Issei mother blinked before setting the bat on the counter. She gave a bow as she introduced herself. Good evening. I'm happy to have you here. My name is Hyoudo Issei. Pleased to meet. The father quickly put the club away and bowed in greeting. My name is Hyoudou Issei. We hope to be good hosts to you. The two then stood and gave a welcoming smile. Welcome to the Hyoudou residence. Rainer blinked. Issei and Seiji, she blinked. They use part of their first names and name you. She looked at her lover. The woman smiled. Yep. She laughed as her husband chuckled. Issei sighed as he sat in his seat. Asia told him to go on ahead to school since she has a surprise for him. He barely paid attention as he made his way to his class, not hearing about the new students that came to the school. Settle down. Settle down. The teacher said as he slapped a stack of papers on his desk. Now students, today we have 2 new members for our class and 2 more classmates from foreign countries. He announced as he looked to the door. You can come inside, you 4. The door slid to the side and 4 teens, 3 females and 1 male, stepped into the class and stood before them. The guys were awing and whispering to each other as they looked at the 2 out of the 3 girls, while some of the girls wondered why the boy was transferred to their class. Issei's eyes were wide. No way. He thought. Hello, everyone. The first female greeted with a cheer. As you know, my name is Kiryu Ika, former Class 2A member and treasurer of the Issei. Pleased to meet you. Ika is a slender cup-bust 17-year-old girl with long brown hair tied in 2 braids with blue ribbons and hazel-colored eyes. She wears a set of pink circle-rimmed glasses on her face. Saji Jinshiro, vice treasurer of the Issei. Pleased to meet you. He said as he looked around the class. Jinshiro is a young man about 17 with short blonde hair and gray eyes. He wears the Kuo Academy boys' school uniform, albeit without the blazer, and his sleeves are rolled up. Hello, everyone. Asia, who was wearing a Kao Gakuin's female uniform, greeted with a beaming smile, getting positive remarks from the male students. My name is Asia Argento and I'm from Italy. I studied Japanese over the years. Pleased to meet you. She ended with a curtsy. Hello. My name is Amano Yuma. I recently moved here a few weeks ago. Yuma greeted in her human form, wearing the female uniform of the Kao Gakuin. Pleased to meet you all. She smiled as she looked around class, catching Issei's eyes with her. A mischievous glint flashed in her eyes. Also Asia-chan, myself, and 2 other girls are staying at the Hyoudous who are letting us lounge at their home. She said with a large smile. At that, the entire class became silent. Issei's eyes were wide, his mouth slightly agape. Asia's face was as red as Ria's hair. Ika had a large perverse grin on her face as her glasses glinted in the light. Inshiro's eyebrow twitched. This guy, what the hell, Issei? M&M along with the male populace, minus Inshiro, shouted at the brunette. Issei simply sighed as he slid himself back, letting the perverted duo fly past him. He quickly got up and caught their legs, saving them from falling out of the 2nd-story window. Guys, this is getting annoying. He stated. My parents were called before they came. I didn't even know about this until last night. He lied. But how can you have such beautiful bodies staying at your house? The duo shouted in tears. Yuma simply giggled. That wasn't nice, Yuma-san. Asia softly scolded the human-formed fallen angel. I couldn't help it. The dark-haired female confessed. Addis and Murayama both looked at each other and nodded, both having a serious expression on their faces. Issei pulled the duo inside. You guys alright? The 2 simply huffed and went to their seat, sulking at the fact that the brunette was a host to 4 girls. It could always get worse. He mentally sighed. The door was moved open and Middle stuck her head in, a smile on her face. Thank you for last night, Issei. She shouted. We had a lot of fun. And then she closed the door. The class was silent once again. Issei simply took a deep breath. Damn it, end of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends.